Okay, this is my impersonation of thousands of you waking up super early because Geneva is 6 hours ahead to see the new watches. Here it is. Rolex releases of bubbles. Oh, wow. Hey, babe. Babe. Rolex released a love day date, which is crazy because... Hello everyone, my name is Michael. Usually Christian sits over here, but he is actually in Geneva at Watches and Wonders 2023. There's something with me not going. This happened last time when Christian went to the Omega event all by himself and met Daniel Craig. The planes that we book, they're too small, so they can't always fit two people on the plane. I think it's something like that. The security concerns or... Either way, Watches and Wonders is happening right now, and we are going to try and ramp up a ton of videos and put them out ASAP. I have Christian, or had him on the line, so we'll get his hot takes.
What is up, Watch fam? This is Christian, the curator of the Daytonas Watch Shop, reporting live from Watches and Wonders in Geneva.
We have some videos of the watches actually in the metal. Anyways, very, very exciting watches to be talking about. Rolex released a ton of watches, and the feedback is terrible on some of them. Actually horrible. That's to be expected. But then there's also some of the greatest releases of all time. I feel like the watches that Rolex released this year, they could have spread out over 4 years and nobody would have batted an eye. Bat an eye? I have no idea. Since COVID, I haven't been able to talk about bats. But we will get into all of them, starting with, kind of no offense to people that own these watches or like these watches or whatever, the most boring updates, then to the most exciting ones. The watches that are hated, I actually really love, and I'm going to try and buy one. Hopefully tomorrow, I will go to an AD that is 3 hours away and say, listen, little AD, I know right now it says Michael Christie wants a 36mm Datejust palm dial. That's like a year and a half old. I understand I'll probably never get that watch. Add another one to the list. Anyways, though, with that being said, Rolex released some of the hottest photos of this year. So let's get into it. I said we'd start with the most boring watch first. No offense, I love the Sky Dweller. It is actually probably the least boring watch in Rolex's collection, but it's never really done anything for me. I think it's just because it's a bit of a bigger watch, so it doesn't fit my wrist too well. But they released the Sky Dweller in 2 new colors, green and then blue with some of the green paint from the green dial spilled into it. Nothing too crazy. It's still the Sky Dweller that we all know and love, but as Hodinky says, this is the first time a white Rolesor version is available on Oysterflex, so that is pretty fun. Next up, the tragedy of the year. The Rolex gutted, just took out to the back behind the barn, shot between the eyes. The Rolex Milgauss, after 16 years of running, the watch is dead. Rolex deleted it from their site. No goodbye, nothing. I think obviously that makes total sense. I'm not surprised. It was either going to get discontinued or it was going to be drastically changed, because this case shape, which we'll get into with the Explorer next, is Rolex, but it is not modern day Rolex. This, even at 39 or 40 millimeters, it just seems like, and I see this on some Rolexes still, but the bezel is a little too large, the lugs are a little too wide for modern Rolex. It still is a beautiful watch, but proportionally, it's old Rolex. So there's 2 things that I think are gonna happen, and it's not gonna be a crazy discontinuing. The Milgauss, I would bet my entire life on will be back. Well, actually, I wouldn't bet my entire life. Obviously, if you've looked into this, you know that the Milgauss came out in 1956. It is 2023. Do a little math there. That is 67 years. So 3 years away from a 70th anniversary in which the Milgauss will definitely be back. If I had to predict, it will either utilize the same case as the Air King, which, shocker that the Air King, for some reason, is still standing. That thing, Rolex is trying to put a bullet in the center of that thing's cranium more than the Milgauss, and it just keeps on flying. If I had to guess, I would say Milgauss is probably going to go into the modern Air King case with the crown guards, or it may get a rotating bezel. For 70 years, and the original one had a rotating bezel, That would be insane. I'll wait 3 years for that. Discontinue the watch and then bring back the bezels. Okay, so we're getting hotter. We're not at the hot topics yet, but the Rolex Explorer was released in 40 millimeters, getting very close to the Explorer 2's 42 millimeters. I get that this would upset some people, the purists. I'm wearing my Explorer today, the 114270. A lot of people say the Explorer should only be 36 millimeters. It is a 36 millimeter watch. And when the 39 was released, I totally agreed. I was like, it looks weird. It doesn't look that great. I have since seen them in the metal. They're beautiful watches, of course. It seemed like an interesting growing phase for Rolex. And then they discontinued the 39 for the 36. And now they're bringing the 36 and the 40. But this time, the 40 looks fantastic. The only gripe that I saw was people said that they think Explorer should be on the second half of the dial, on the bottom half. I guess if I look at it, it does seem like they really tried to cram it in there, getting a little close to the hands. But whatever, either way. I think they nailed proportions on the case. I think they nailed proportions on the dial. And I want to confirm this, but it's my biggest gripe against the Oyster Perpetual in 41 Wow, Rolex updated their website too. Looks good, guys. Good job. Okay, so I can't tell from just a few pictures of the new Explorer, but it does look like they addressed my biggest gripe with the 41 millimeter OPs, which was it looked like they used the same size crown as the 36 millimeter OPs, which makes sense if the thickness of the watch doesn't change that drastically. You don't want to have a crown sticking out. But to me, it always looked like the crown was wrong, like the crown was repaired and the repair shop only had a smaller crown and they like plucked that on. But now, the crown looks like it has the right amount of heft to it and size to it. One last little note about the Explorer is that the 39 had a matte dial, the 40 has a lacquer dial, so it's shiny.
Rolex just introduced the Platinum Daytona with an exhibition case back, okay?
Yep.
So do you really think that the steel Daytona in a few years won't see the same thing? And think about all the people that own and love their steel Daytona. They are going to 100% get back on the line for an exhibition because that's the next level, right? Again, Very similar movements. It's not a matter of more complication. It's just a matter of having that extra little beautiful thing. You and I have been saying for years that Rolex should do exhibition case backs. Years. Yep. There's just something so fundamentally beautiful and poetic about looking at an automatic movement. And then everyone says, oh, well, these movements, they're not really like pieces of art. It's just a regular workhorse movement. It's not one of these Patek or Japek or whatever. And I said, it doesn't matter. They should do it. We said that. Yeah, and now, all these years later, they're finally doing it.
They finally listened to the experts.
Exactly. But how terrific. It's funny, though. I wonder if the Platinum Daytona will be lighter now without the metal case back. So in that case, I'm off the list.
Yeah, you like, take my name off, it's going to be too light. The case is slightly redesigned. Is it noticeable at all? It doesn't look noticeable from pictures.
For me, I wasn't able to really notice the difference, to be honest. That being said, I don't own a Daytona, so maybe my senses aren't so sharp on that. But no, for me personally, I wasn't able to notice a significant difference.
If someone said to me, Michael, does this Daytona look different than last year's or the previous model? I'd say, of course. It looks, it's obvious that it's a different watch. And if someone said, tell me how it's different, I'd say, well, it seems to have a certain je ne sais quoi. The subdials are a little thinner, the indices are a little thinner, stuff like that. And here is Rolex's official statement. The dial receives new graphic balance and harmonious color combinations accentuate the contrast between the dial and the counters, or the rings. The Oyster case has been redesigned and its profile is highlighted by the light reflections on the lugs and case sides. On versions with a Cerachrome bezel, the bezel is edged with a thin band of the same metal as the middle case. So essentially you have the ceramic bezel and now there's a little metal ring around it on the outside. A lot of comments were saying, I don't really like that. I feel like it will get nicked more. It's really my least favorite part of the design. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I love the steel outer. I'm assuming the thought is it prevents you from accidentally chipping the Cerachrome. I don't know, I'm making stuff up. I assume that's why it's there, rather hit the steel than the Cerachrome. Either way, the Daytona continues to be just an unobtainable grail watch of mine that I find incredibly beautiful. I know this is a hot take. It just seems like a really cool looking watch. Okay, next up, the Cellini is going to be following the exact same footsteps that the Milgauss took when it was walking behind the barn. This time it was probably more gruesome considering the Cellini saw the Milgauss and saw what was happening to it. But it's gone and replaced by the Rolex 1908. But the Cellini is dead and there's the new Perpetual collection. Have you seen that?
Oh, they're not calling it Cellini? I didn't realize that.
Apparently, the title of the article is Rolex Cellini is dead. It's a Perpetual collection. What do you think about that? I think it's a nice looking watch.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a very nice looking watch. I think that this is the closest that Rolex has gotten to really doing, it's not a reissue, but doing something really, really vintage, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the Daytonas that they released a couple years ago had some vintage, inspiration. Rolex does, things that they pull from their past, but this is very on the nose, very literal, mid-20th century, or even earlier than that. Very, very cool watch.
Yeah, I actually really like it. $21,000.
Yeah,
yellow and white gold.
That's a fair number. Obviously, it's a lot of money, but if you're putting it up against, time only, precious metal watches from the large brands, that is an extremely fair price.
I think so too. I really like the look of the watch. I think it's a perfect balance of a dress watch but vintage. It looks like a vintage OP, which is now dress.
Totally. They did a phenomenal job.
To be honest, I feel like Rolex did one of these where everybody was like, ew, I hate the Cellini, it's so ugly. And Rolex was like, okay, we'll discontinue it. What about the 1908? And everybody was like, I love the 1908. Something about it is just so much better. Obviously, we know that the Rolex Deep Sea was released, I think, this year, may have been last year, but it was like a 600 millimeter dive watch that was 80 millimeters thick, and James Cameron made a movie about it. Everybody was like, cool, Rolex, now you're just trolling us to the point where you're not only releasing unobtainable watches, you're releasing unobtainable, unwearable watches. You guys are just the best. But not anymore. Now they're only releasing unobtainable watches, especially this watch. This is the titanium Yacht-Master, which a lot of people expected to come out, but not for many, many years. This is the second ever watch that Rolex has released in titanium. A lot of people are saying I'd rather get the Pelagos for way cheaper. That is also titanium. Something to note there is, I believe the Pelagos is grade 2. Rolex is using grade 5. So grade 5 is a lot stronger, a lot harder. And grade 5 has self-healing properties. If you get scuffs or scratches on your watch, they will slowly disappear as the unoxidized portions of titanium will create a gray patina upon contact with air. I don't know if that's true, to be honest. What about the titanium Yacht-Master? How's that?
That's my pick, man. That's my pick.
Yeah?
It's an unbelievable watch. Obviously a little big at 42,
yep.
But I think that's for me. That's a very personal assessment. I think it is the perfect size for really the world. The beveled lugs are unbelievable. Finally, titanium. You and I have said pretty recently that if James Bond were to wear a Rolex today, which Rolex would he wear? That's the Rolex he would wear, right?
Really?
It's lightweight, it's elegant, it's durable. That is this Yacht-Master is more related to the original Submariners than the current Submariner, right? Submariner's a great watch, but it has become a bit of a jewelry piece.
Yep.
This titanium is not. This is the titanium watch. This is the Rolex. This is the Rolex Oyster that you want to, take advantage of your 00 status with, right? Like you could kill somebody. You know what I mean? Like this is a really great watch.
Wow. Okay. Perfect. It's awesome. It is a modern tool watch from Rolex. Tool watch. Well, I put this part later in the list because I know it's a big deal for some of you. It's not a very big deal for me, no offense. But the Rolex GMT Master II has been released in full yellow gold on a Jubilee bracelet and two-tone on a Jubilee bracelet. That's great. Now, you know what? I'll save the most controversial one till the end. The Rolex Bubble OP. It's a new steel Oyster Perpetual with a sky blue celebration dial decorated with a cluster of different size bubbles that reunite all the colors from eye-popping line of lacquered OPs that rocketed the watch world in 2020. If you're keeping score at home, that's pastel pink, hunter green, coral, yellow, and turquoise.
Well, speaking of OPs, the craziest OP was wild.
I want that one. That's the OP I want. I'm gonna put myself on the list right after my Palm Dial date test.
What does that remind you of? What does that remind you of?
The PRX painted watch.
Leave it to you to like think Tissot when they see a Rolex. No, that's ridiculous.
You're like, you are too poor.
Yeah, exactly. That reminds me of like, obviously, so all those colors are from the Rolex OP collection that did super well, right, in the last couple of years.
Of course.
It's all those individual colors. Very cool. And I think, obviously, this is a very fun watch. And it kind of reminded me of like balloons in the sky. So I don't know, maybe that's silly, but it really reminded me of just like, I don't know, this is probably the most bizarre and playful watch Rolex has released. I don't know, in my recollection. It makes almost no sense, and I love that they did it.
You want it, right?
I think it's great. I mean, listen, there are other things that I want, but that is a cool watch.
I want this watch. This watch is nuts. This is just an OP, obviously. The dial is insane, and this is the watch that I'm going to try my absolute hardest to get. Some people, actually, the reception on this watch seems very positive. A lot of the comments on Houdinki are like, yeah, this is a great watch. This is awesome. I think this watch is going to be literally impossible to get. If I wasn't making this video, I would be driving to 80s right now trying to get this watch. To me, this is the epitome of the perfect OP. The reason Christian and Rolly love GMTs is because it has two different colors on the ceramic bezel or on the aluminum bezel. It has some color for Rolex. The reason why my Explorer, the only thing that gets me is that it's so boring. It is just a black dialed watch. It is incredibly boring. And being in the watch world, I see watches all the time. I want to have cool, fun watches or a watch that feels more different or more like me. This is that watch. So I'm going to try my absolute hardest to get this. Little teaser, I won't get it. Okay, and now, the most controversial Rolex watch maybe ever released. I have no idea. It's only been getting negative feedback from what I can tell. Besides a very select group of people, I think it will be one of the most collectible watches ever. Obviously, you'll never be able to get these. This is the most 2023, this era defining watch of all time. It's ridiculous. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. You won't know what day it is or what the date is, especially, and that's a very weird thing when you buy a day date. But it's unreal. And this would be the watch that I would work really hard to get if I could afford one of these, or if I thought I could have the slightest chance to get one, both of which I don't and can't. What about you being right, or not even right, but what you wanted being kind of true? You have the stone day dates, and then you have the crazy like puzzle day date that says love on the date wheel.
Yeah, bizarre. Again, Rolex is being playful. I mean, think about even, I guess it was last year when they released the left-hand, GMT, right? Yep. Rolex is basically trying to say, never call us predictable. Right? We clearly have patterns. Sure, obviously Rolex has patterns, but we're not predictable. We're always going to throw you some curveballs you're not really going to know. There's no way you would have anticipated. And I think that the love dial is a good example of that. And I love the stone dials. That is just classic Rolex. That brings me back to when I got into watches, which was Phillips' glamorous day-date auction back in, I don't want to make up a number, but I think 2015. And I just remember saying that was my intro into the vintage watch world, and saying, wow, look at Rolex. We know them for the GMT and for the Submariner and for the day date. And little do we realize that their history is so rich with all these metals and stones and patterns, and wow, it's so much more faceted than I knew before. Do you know what I mean? It was like my real introduction to Rolex.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that love watch is insane. 31 emojis as dates, and then you have love, eternity. Oh no, happy, eternity, gratitude, peace, faith, love, and hope. That is wild.
Yeah, that's good. I'm interested to see where that watch sells the best. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be. I'm sure you won't be able to get one. I'm sure it'll be one of those. But it's all very interesting.
This is the most fever dreamed watch that Rolex has ever made. This is not Rolex being Rolex. This is all of a sudden Rolex takes the Cellini and the Milgauss out back, murders them, and then comes back into the cabin, looks at all the other watches, and says, I think I want to make a day date and put love on the dial instead of Monday. And I love it. I think it's awesome. I think Crazy Rolex is fun. I think Crazy Rolex realized that the watch market is growing so big, they literally can't make watches fast enough, which also means people are going to want to be individual at every single level they can. They can make weird stuff. They can introduce artist collaborations. To a lot of people, that would be them killing their brand, which it could be, who knows, in 5 to 10 years if they're doing all these weird artist collaborations. But as of right now, this is the craziest thing Rolex has done in a while. This whole release has been the craziest thing that Rolex has done for a while. Definitely subscribe and stay tuned because we will be getting in the metal shots and watches on Christian's wrist and all of that, hopefully. But either way, if not, Christian and I are a lot of fun to hang around with anyways. So thank you so much. I will see you all very soon.